Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sabbath services here at Tomorrow's Church of God. For our first song today, if everybody would please turn to page number 34 and stand. Make sure everybody's got a hymnal. Page number 34. We're going to sing, How Excellent Is Thy Name. Page number 34.
Glory
great start. Now we'll turn back a couple pages to page number 11. I'm going to sing Blessed and Happy is the Man. After that, we'll get Mr. Johnny Padilla to come do the opening prayer. Page number 11. Thank you. And now for opening prayer today, Mr. Johnny Padilla.
Our Heavenly and Merciful Father, come before you on this Sabbath day, Father, to give you thanks and praise and also to your Son, Father. Enjoy singing to you both, Father, and also, Father, your ways are righteous and in your kingdom, Father, and may you bring over us your Holy Spirit, Father, so we can come into your truths and gain understanding as we read your words from the scriptures, and also inspire Joe and may use him as a vessel to lead the Bible study as we go into Joshua chapter 5 and 6, and also inspire each one of us, and for those listening in, inspire them so they gain knowledge also, and also for those not able to be here or in illness, may you be with them and strengthen them, and also for those under infirmity, may you asking for a divine touch of healing and comforting, Father. Your ways are of perfection, and all this we ask in your Son's name. Amen.
Thank you, Johnny. All right, a couple of announcements this morning. It says, good morning and welcome to tomorrow's Church of God, not yesterday's Church of God. And welcome to all of our online viewers. You can download today's scriptures very easily by just opening up your Bibles. We're going to be covering Joshua 5 and 6. But normally you can go to our website under audio, video, select the scripture handout, and you can find a PDF right there. But like I said, it's even easier today. Just open up your Bibles and read along. We are now on Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, and Roku. If you do look for us on Roku, we're under The Sabbath Channel. Please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also share with your friends. This will help get the word out and help increase our online presence. One of those things, too, we're thinking about, I was just talking to Ron about it a little while ago. I think we're about not streaming live to YouTube. So if you normally watch us from YouTube, you may want to try Rumble, Facebook, or Roku, and that way we can go in and separate the Bible study and the main messages and everything else so that it'd be easier for online viewers to watch the whole thing and watch it all the way to the end and like and subscribe on there. So that's a thought. So if you normally watch this on YouTube and happen to miss this one week, try those other platforms and then go back to YouTube and watch it again. If you would like one of our 2025 calendars or booklets, simply send your address and an email to tomorrowtcog@gmail.com. I don't know if Ron can put that up on the screen. He can, he says. All right. You can also download a copy of that 2025 calendar simply by going to our website, which is thetcog.com. Select literature, then calendars. And now the dates in this calendar are subject to change based on the new moon physical observations. You can ask your Bible study questions today. Simply go online, which is thetcog.com, our website. Select TCOG streaming, and you can ask your questions in the comment section. It doesn't have to be a question. You can just make a comment. We'll try to get to it as soon as possible and read it out loud for everybody that we can make sure and involve all of our online viewers. So I know there's one person, he says he's the only one that hits the like and subscribe button. So thank you, Robert, if you keep doing that. But if you've got any comments or anything, make sure and send them in so that we can get those addressed. That is all of our announcements, although I got 2 more pages of the same ones. That way I don't leave them anymore. But now on your screen, you should see the prayer list for this week. If you would, and once it gets there, if you'll please keep everybody on this list in your thoughts and prayers along with their family. I know that they would greatly appreciate it. Also, let's see, is Tony? Yeah, Tony's on there. Fortunately, I heard that he had to go to the hospital last night. He is back home now, but if you would definitely keep him and Charlotte in your prayers, I know that, again, that they would greatly appreciate that. And if you guys are watching, make sure to send in your comments and questions so that we can address those. All right. So, without further ado, there's no main message today. It's just me. Sorry, you gotta watch me. But we are going to cover 2 different chapters today. We're going to cover Joshua 5, continuing on in the book of Joshua, and Joshua 6. I think these are some really, really interesting chapters. I'm not sure if anybody had a chance to study. I know Johnny did ahead of the schedule, but it's really interesting. And as we go through, follow along in different versions. I highly encourage that. That way we can kind of compare and contrast and get to the root of everything that we're trying to find here. But I'm reading out of the Names of God Bible. My little subhead title here, or title says, Preparations for the First Passover in Canaan. If you remember from Joshua 5, they had just crossed the river and how miraculous that was. And then we're going to start in verse 1. It says, all the Amorite kings went, kings west of the Jordan River, all the Canaanite kings along the Mediterranean Sea, heard that Yahweh had dried up the Jordan River so that the Israelites could cross. So they lost heart and had no courage left to face the people of Israel. At that time, Yahweh spoke to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the men of Israel. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the men of Israel at the hill of circumcision. Verse 4, this is the reason Joshua circumcised them. All the soldiers had died on the way through the desert after they left Egypt. The men who left Egypt had been circumcised. However, the men born later on the way through the desert were not circumcised. For 40 years, the Israelites wandered through the desert until their soldiers, the soldiers who left Egypt died. They died because they disobeyed Yahweh. Yahweh swore that he would not let them see the land flowing with milk and honey, which Yahweh had sworn to give our ancestors. The sons who took their place had not been circumcised on the way. So Joshua circumcised them. When all the men had been circumcised, they remained in camp until they recovered. Yahweh said to Joshua, today I have removed the disgrace of Egypt from you. So Joshua named the place Gilgal, the name it still has today. Verse 10, the people of Israel camped at Gilgal in the Jericho plain. There they celebrated the Passover on the evening of the 14th day of the month. On the day after the Passover, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread, and roasted grain. The day after that, the manna stopped. The people of Israel never had manna again. That year they began to eat the crops that grew in Canaan. Verse 13, my head title says, the commander of the Eternalist army speaks to Joshua. When Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you one of us, or are you one of our enemies?" He answered, "Neither one. I am here as the commander of Yahweh's army." Immediately, Joshua bowed his face, touching the ground, and worshipped. He asked, "Sir, what do you want to tell me?" The commander of Yahweh's army said to Joshua, "Take off your sandals, because this place where you are standing is holy." So Joshua did as he was told. Wow, pretty interesting stuff here. What kind of comments, questions we got? Lydia.
So, when they were in the desert for the 40 years, Moses didn't tell them they had to be circumcised all that time?
That's a great question. And according to this, they did not. And so one of the things that, I say that again? That's very surprising, right? Because I tried to do a bunch of research on this. So the first time it's mentioned, circumcision is mentioned, is in Genesis 17, verses 10 through 14, where it talks to Abraham about his covenant with God. It's how this is going to be a sign to God that he's in covenant with him, right? And then we don't see it again until Exodus 12, and it's in 44 and 48. And it's actually when they're leaving, you know, Exodus 12 is the Exodus kind of chapter from Egypt. And in there, it talks about no one, you know, the strangers cannot do the Passover with you unless they're circumcised. So I tried to find it, and maybe somebody online or out here can tell me, because I couldn't find it anywhere where they were circumcised before they left Egypt. Because again, the only thing that I could find is in 12 where it says, the sojourners that are coming with you have to be circumcised. But it didn't say anything about the 600,000 men. Yes, sir.
The only other place I can think of where it talks about being circumcised is with Abraham.
Well, that's in Genesis, where was it? Genesis 17. Now, it does mention, I take it back, it does mention circumcision with Zilpah, Moses' wife, Zilpah, when they were traveling and God was about to kill him. And so she circumcised her sons. But other than those places, I couldn't find the word circumcision. It may be in a different form or something, but I thought that was odd because it says here that all the men who came out of Egypt were circumcised. And then in Exodus 12, 44, and 48, it talks about everybody that's coming with you has to be circumcised, but I couldn't find it where it actually said that the Israelites were. Yes, sir.
Isn't it part of the law?
It is part of the law, yeah. But why would he say that he's going to remove the disgrace of Egypt? In verse number 9, it says, Yahweh said to Joshua, now this is after he circumcised everybody. He said, today I have removed the disgrace of Egypt from you. So Joshua named the place Gilgal. So with that, was the disgrace of Egypt, they weren't circumcising in Egypt? I mean, obviously Moses wasn't, or he didn't circumcise his children. And then the other people around, you would think if you had this big, you know, conglomerate of Israelites and they were all circumcision, maybe some of the sojourners or the other people in Egypt would have done it, but it doesn't say. So anybody online, you know, bring in your comments or your questions on there, because I thought that was very interesting. But it does say, again, it says that everybody was circumcised out of Egypt, but then they didn't circumcise anybody else, which makes me think, and I don't know if anybody's got a question, but I'm going to go to my second part real quick. Go ahead.
Well, in verse 7, it says they had not been circumcised on the way.
Yeah.
And so was it just that period maybe that they, as they were traveling, they weren't doing that?
Well, so you know that it was everybody under the age of 20 is the only people around. So were the people under the age of 20 circumcised? I don't know. They wouldn't have been a fighting age, so they wouldn't have been counted in that 600,000 that the Exodus talks about, where those men were circumcised on there. Which is, any other comments, questions? Because I got to go ahead, Johnny. I just keep going on this.
Just that, you know, you had Abraham, you know, he was circumcised.
Yep.
And taught it to Noah and his 3 sons, you know, so it's follow on through, you know, God knows.
Well, but vice versa, right? So Noah was before, but so Abraham circumcised Israel. I'm sorry, Isaac. Sorry, Isaac, and Jacob was circumcised, and the sons were all circumcised as part. I assume that, right? It actually doesn't say anywhere, But I assume that because that was the covenant that God made with Abraham, hey, this is a sign between me and you of our covenant, that he would continue that on. And actually, it does say that Isaac was circumcised on the 8th day. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. Jacob, one of those were circumcised on the 8th day, because I think Isaac was already older when they made that covenant. So go ahead, sorry.
Okay, and then follow through with Jacob and then his 12 sons. I mean, it's a law. I mean, it's done. It's a done deal. But, you know, when God says, you know, they were circumcised, they're circumcised, you know. Even when they were in Egypt for 400 years, they just followed the law.
But they didn't know the law. That 430 years, they lost all.
God knows, you know, or else he wouldn't have said it.
What do you want to say? What?
Well, okay, when they were in Egypt for 400 years,
Uh-huh.
I kind of believe it's a pretty good chance they had that law on the wrap to where they had to be circumcised.
Why do you say that?
Okay, from there's you have your Egyptians,
Uh-huh.
they're not circumcised, and then to differentiate from Egyptian from Israel, you know, that's going to be the sign right there.
Well, and I can't disagree, right? Or I can't argue, because it doesn't say. It just says that they were all circumcised when they came out of Egypt.
But God already said it. You know?
Well, then why didn't they do it in the wilderness? Because Moses was talking directly to God. So why would they have done it in their pagan society that they lived in for 430 years, but not in the wilderness for 40 years when Moses was directly talking to God?
That's to build in wilderness, you know, they were going through a hard time. You know, these people were going through a hard time.
No, I understand.
They just, you know, gave all hopes in keeping the laws more, in the sense of saying, especially when it comes to circumcision. You know, so you know,
I'm trying to
just,
think, but
like these people, they were like very irate. You know,
Maybe
very
they rebelled.
yeah,
They didn't want to do it.
rebelled. You know. And that's the only thing I can come up with. They were rebellious people.
right. So your contention is that they were continuing circumcision all the way through Egypt for the 430 years. That's why it doesn't mention them being circumcised when they came out of Egypt, but then they stopped because they rebelled when they're with God, because they had to stay there for 40 years.
That's, you know,
It's a good thought on there.
But,
Yeah.
You probably don't seem to.
Well, no, I can't prove it. That's the problem. Is I can't prove it.
Yeah. But it's in the scripture. You know, God says, you know, they were. You know, so.
Yeah, but when was that?
Well, like I mentioned before, you know, throughout the 400 years, you know, until they came out of there, you know, they went into the wilderness, and they were rebellious against God. You know,
Right.
And refused to go His way. They kind of like wanted to be back with Egypt. Seemed like.
Well, but see, that's when the law was given, is when they were in the wilderness. But anyway, let me get to Ron real quick, and we'll continue on.
Well, I'm not real sure that they were even observing Passover during that 40 years.
That was my next point.
And that leads me to believe that they were outside the Abrahamic covenant,
For 40
the
years.
blood covenant for 40 years, and they didn't enter back into it until they came back across the Jordan.
Right. Because in all great comments, right? And again, this is I am average Joe. I am not a Bible scholar or anything else. I'm just letting y'all know my thoughts on it, right? Which are probably incorrect. Charlie agrees. But that was my next thought that I was going to get to, because it talks about they did Passover in Egypt, right? And they left. And then in Leviticus, I'm sorry, it was Numbers 9, there it is. Numbers 9, they did Passover the second year. But here's the deal. You can't do Passover if you're uncircumcised. That's part of the law. You can't do Passover if you're uncircumcised. So to Ron's point, did they not do Passover for the other 38 years? And I see everybody's eyebrows going together, which is great. This is the conversation that I wanted to have, because I assumed they did Passover every year. But if a part of the law, going back to Johnny's comment, if it's in the law says you can't do Passover if you're uncircumcised. So they were there for 40 years. And these, obviously, it says all the men that were in the desert were not circumcised because they got circumcised now. So how could they do the Passover for the last 38 years if they were uncircumcised? Just a thought. Make everybody's ticker or brain go a little bit on there. I'm open to suggestions or thoughts or comments on there.
Just rebellious people.
Rebellious people, yeah.
You
It
know,
says
I
right
mean,
there, they rebelled,
yeah.
but disobeyed, they died because they disobeyed.
Mhm.
They died, yeah, but that was because
Yeah.
the specific instance of the spies going in and them saying, "Oh, we can't do it," and so that was that specific instance of rebellion is the reason they were in the wilderness for 40 years. Had they not done that, they would have gone immediately into the promised land. Now, again, this was still after the second year because they did the first Passover, and then the second year they did Passover again, and then they were supposed to go into the promised land. So they were still in the wilderness for a year at least, right, as they were learning the different laws on there that God had for them. But to Johnny's point, were they just rebellious because they weren't allowed to go? I don't know. It's just a thought. What, comments, questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm having a problem with them not doing Passover during that 38 years. By the time they got here, 40 years later, and had it when they went in Canaan, they would have forgotten all the stuff to do, seems like.
Yeah. I mean, so with that being said, they were in Egypt for 430 years. And you want to tell me that they continued the circumcision for 430 years? But this was
I
a
think they-
tenth of the time in the wilderness, and they forgot about
I
it?
think they still had a knowledge of the laws. They may not have been doing them properly, but I think they had a history of the way they were supposed to go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where we're at today, right? We can have a knowledge. We don't know exactly. We weren't there. We have a knowledge, but if you look around, I mean, the majority of people don't practice that.
Yeah. Seems like they would have had to have some kind of knowledge of it to accept what they were told to do. But, oh, yeah, well, now we remember, or this sounds familiar.
Right. It's a thought, right? It's a great thought, and there's no wrong answers except for the ones that I don't say, right? So, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, I think Egypt's a microcosm of what we're living in today.
Yeah.
When you look at it, because the Christian world's in, well, we're all in Egypt right now, but only certain people hold on to the basic real truths of God's word and actually apply it to their lives. And because Egypt has such an influence on the world today.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, Egypt was fun. If it wasn't fun, then people wouldn't do it, right?
Oh yeah, they like them leeks and onions.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, they were slaves, right? And they were put through a lot of stuff. But and several times in Exodus and throughout the Old Testament, they were talking about, hey, let us go back. Why'd you take us out of there? At least we had food. At least we did that. So obviously it wasn't as bad as them in the desert for 40 years, which may go back to Johnny's comment on they were rebelling, and that's why they didn't do the circumcision. Yes, sir.
It kind of goes back. I was talking to a person this week about God's truth and stuff, and they said, "Well, that's just too much religion for me."
Well, which is funny, because what religion is it? If you look at the Bible, tell me what the religion is. Is it Christianity? No, it doesn't say it's Christianity. The Jews use the Old Testament, or believe in everything in the not only the Torah, but the whole Old Testament. But it doesn't say anything about this is Jewish. In fact, the only time he said that it's any kind of religious thing that I could think of is when he said, was it in Leviticus 23, where he says, hey, these are my feasts. So I don't know what his religion is, but if you're following his feast days and following his laws, then you would fall under his religion, which is not even a religion. It's just a set of rules. It's a way, yeah, right? I mean, we have that today. Is the United States government, is that a religion? Because they have laws they want you to follow. And in my opinion, it's not a religion. It's just a way of life. Yeah. Where there was a little book. I mean, it's 30 years old or whatever. It was Life's Little Instruction Book or something, and it had all these little sayings that you could do to have a better life. And that's basically what the Bible was. Hey, do this, you'll prosper, you'll be fantastic. People will be amazed at you, and if you don't, you get to be like everybody else, right? Go ahead, Johnny.
There, we find that the one soldier of God, that's a holy ground.
Oh yeah, you're talking about verses. I'm just letting everybody know verses 13 through 15, where it talks to the Eternal's army, the commander of the Eternal's army. Sorry, go ahead.
Joshua had to remove his shoes, because Ron mentioned before, the leather is, from slaughtered cow. So, just barefoot on the ground. Mainly, it's a holy ground.
Right.
So, God trying to make it to a holy ground and righteous people to be there, in this promised land.
Yeah.
Removing all these evil, pagan, nowadays, there's Christmas, there's Easter, all this kind of all tied in. But anyway, remove it from that location, cause that's God's land,
Yeah. No, that's a great idea, a great thought. I mean, this is the promised land that He told Abraham that He was going to give his descendants. Now, on this specific portion, on 13 through 15, who is the commander of Yahweh's army? Messiah, right? So, who was the voice that was in the burning bush for Moses? Messiah. So my thought on that is when Moses, who was walking around, and he started talking to the bush, or the bush started talking to him, the bush said, "You're on holy ground." Right? So, because the Messiah was there. Not, I like the idea and the thought on there, but that land where Joshua particularly was Holy Land, because that was the Messiah, that is the commander of the army right there talking to him. We also get that too, where in the New Testament, for all the New Testament people, in John 6:46, where he says, "I'm saying now that no one has seen the Father." Well, if the bush was God, or if this army leader was God, and that was the Father, then Messiah, Jesus, was incorrect in that statement right there. Yes, sir.
Well, it also tells you in 1 Corinthians 10, 1 through 5, that He was the rock that Israel followed in the desert.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. And so my thought on here, and it kind of seems like everybody agrees, so if you're online, you don't agree, send it in. Let me know. Is the commander of Yahweh's army was the Messiah. He was talking to him, and here's another thought. One was the ground. It said, "Hey, this is holy ground. Take your shoes off." And then number two was immediately, and halfway through 14, it says, "Immediately Joshua bowed his face, touching the ground, and worshipped." Now, we've seen several times, other times throughout the Bible, where if somebody bows down and starts to worship to an angel, that angel says, "No, stop right there." Yeah, so the only people the only person you bow down to is the Messiah, Jesus, Yahweh or Yeshua, whatever you want to say it, you are allowed to bow down and worship Him, but none of His angels or anything else. Kind of the hierarchy and the power there. So with those two kind of ideas, with the shoes and with the bowing down and not being told not to, I firmly think that was the Messiah. So if you disagree, I'd love to hear it. Everybody online. Because everybody here is they're not disagreeing with me right now, face to face anyway. All right, yes, sir.
I'm not disagreeing, but
Johnny's gonna try to say it.
Talking about something else here. Who are the Amorites and who is Canaan? Because both of them are mentioned here. When it says Amorites pretty much from the Jordan west, and Canaan more like the east side.
Right.
Jordan. But they all intermingle throughout times, anyhow. But the Amorites, these are descended from Emor, E-M-E-R, is the fourth son of Canaan, son of Ham.
Okay.
And then the Canaanites, they're descended from Ham. And for modern day, Canaan is Iran, and for the Amorites, they're Syrians.
Okay.
They
Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's I love the research that Johnny puts into. He goes He goes way deep in everything.
Then you have the Levant, but they're not tribe. They call it Levant, Levant. They made up of different kingdoms.
Okay.
Being would be Israel. What the main ones are nowadays is Israel, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Palestine. And for religion, the Levant, they're mainly birthplace of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the main focus here, what's going nowadays, is a religious conflict. So, they want to make their own religion, to be Judaism or to be Islam or to be Christianity. So that's the conflict that's going on nowadays in modern time.
We definitely see it in modern times, but we've seen it throughout the centuries, right? I mean, this is just a continual fight that's been going on. Yeah, and just to make a real comment, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second to make a comment on there too. So you remember before they crossed the Jordan River, where were they at? They were in the land of the Amorites. So, and they were, they killed all the Amorites, supposedly. But that's a figurative statement in the Bible. It means that they just kind of wipe out that area on there, as we see right now. Because as Johnny pointed out in verse 1, it says the Amorite kings. Well, if you just killed all the Amorite kings on the other side of Jordan, how do you have Amorite kings over here? So it was the Amorite territory where they were at, and so I don't know if some of them fled or tried to get away, or if they just were on the other side of the Jordan River also. When they come in there, Jericho, I think, is where the Amorite kings are, what we're going to find out about in the next chapter. But then the Canaanites were along the Mediterranean Sea, so they were pushed even further inland on there. And all these kingdoms, after hearing about this miraculous crossing, we got into it last week, of how wide that dry bed had to be for a couple million people to come through, is just absolutely amazing. And so the story got to them. And again, it was during the flooding season. It wasn't the hottest time in the summer. This was during their flood season, the early spring. Go ahead, Johnny. Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to give everybody some background on there.
And another thing where it says their heart melted, there were options they could have done. These people, the
Amorites, the Canaanites?
the Jericho, the Jericho community. They had options they could have done. They could have surrendered, which they did not follow through on that, or the other option they done is obey the king, which was a necessity to fight for their homes and their families.
Which is kind of understandable. You got an invading army coming in. You just want to give it up. We know that from just be it today, right?
I mean, it would have been better for them if they would have just surrendered.
Yeah. It would have been better for them for sure if they would have surrendered. Let me get to Ron real fast. He's got a comment.
Well, there's two things.
One at a time.
Okay. One, it's interesting that the manna ceased as soon as they came in and had that first Passover. That was it. Mm-hmm. Then they started eating the grain in the land after that.
Right.
I've had people in the past ask me, because I associate that with Pentecost. We talk about it kind of in the same subject line.
Yeah.
And the manna ceased at that point. There was no old bread or whatever. Mm-hmm. It was all new grain after that. That was my first point. Second point is, I find it back to the commander of the army of God. And that's the Messiah. Isn't that the first time that? Well, no, it's not, because Abraham had sat down and had lunch with him. I'm going to say there are periods of times where he can actually manifest himself as humans. But if he's in a God form, he can't be looked upon.
Okay. So is that where you're getting in the Matthew? What was it, Matthew 6:46, where he said nobody has seen him? Or
no.
Okay.
I'm just making the observation.
Yeah. So there's another realm outside of what we see today, where he could be right here and we not know it, or he could manifest himself to be known. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah. Back on your first point on there, I thought it was very interesting. So, and this is in verses, I think it's 10 through 12. You know, it's the first mention of celebrating Passover since Numbers 9. In Numbers 9, it said the second year, first month. So that was before the rebellion that we talked about, which caused them to be in there for 40 years. And so I have a question, was that 40 years on top of the second year that they were there, or is that 40 years include that? That's a little side note. But what I thought was very interesting is verses 11 through 12. It says, on the day after Passover, which is the 15th, they ate produce of the land and the new grain and roasted it. And to Ron's point, then the manna stopped. So the manna actually stopped on the 16th. And so if anybody's asking, why is he talking about this? There's been a kind of contention on there of when is the Sabbath day that the Bible talks about after Passover. And the first day, or after Passover, which is actually the 15th day of the month, is the first Sabbath after Passover. And so, it's highly regarded in several, Christian or faiths or whatever else that the first Saturday Sabbath after Passover is that date. Now, with this lining up and the comments that Linda made before, you can't eat unleavened bread until the new grain, and they ate the new grain on the 15th day. And it was unleavened because it was brand new grain, didn't have time to ferment or anything else, right? So this just kind of backs up the thought that we've had over the last year or so about the first Sabbath being the day after Passover, which is the beginning of the 15th and the whole 15th day. Yes, sir.
Well, and so does the original text say that.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people, they all want to be Hebrew and talk about Hebrew and everything else, but they don't want to go back to the original text when it comes to the Feast of Weeks.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, right? Because that's the day, on the 16th day is when you start counting. So you count 7 weeks after that day to get to the 50 weeks. And, I grew up in it for 30, 40, 50 years, whatever it is, that it always falls on a Sunday, and 50 days later is a Sunday. And that's not the case according to this. It could be, but it's on the 16th. And we know from our last several years of trying to calculate that it's not always on the same day of the week. It's very interesting, though, just for everybody's information, is Passover falls on a Wednesday more than just about any other day that we've been observing. So I thought that was interesting because that was the same date for the Messiah on there. Just a side note. All right, I'm rambling. What other kind of comments, questions you got? Yes, sir.
Let's come back to the circumcision.
Circumcision. All right, back to the circumcision.
Yeah.
Johnny did not like my answer, so he wants to revisit this.
So, God allowed them to cross Jordan and be circumcised on the east side. Why didn't he do it on the west side where it'd be much more safe, more for safety purposes?
It's a great question.
So,
good question was, they crossed the Jordan on the 10th, and then they were circumcised after that. And Johnny's question is, well, why didn't they circumcise before the 10th, before they crossed the Jordan? It would have been much safer, right? Because they eliminated all the enemy on the east side of the Jordan, but the west side, they have not touched any of the enemy over there. I have a thought, and again, this is my. Oh, you have a thought? Go ahead. You tell me your thought first.
well, mainly, the people that live in Jericho, they were traumatized, to where, they just did not want to.
They lost their heart, right? Their heart.
Lost their heart. Well, there where it says in chapter 2, verses 9 and 11, but mentions about their heart is melted. They didn't have a heart to fight.
They don't have the heart to fight, and also their courage just escaped them. Like Mike Tyson says, everybody's tough until you get punched in the nose.
So, it took one thing is them being traumatized, and the next thing is, where is Joshua and the people's faith at? It's kind of doing two things at once. God's doing two things at once. Your faith is it? Are you with me, or are you going to do something different? But they held to God's strong faith, and because the Jericho people, they're going to see what's going on. They're getting circumcised over here,
Right.
And it usually takes about 3 weeks for them to heal. But for God, he probably can have him heal a lot sooner.
Right.
Because from day 4 to 10, so 6 days to heal. You know, I mean, they were healed after 6 days. If I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
mistaken.
I don't know where it specifically says the 6 days on there, or kind of that time frame. But I agree with you. It's a very they were down for a little bit. It says because in at verse 8 it says when all the men had been circumcised, they remained in the camp until they recovered. So it probably wasn't the very next day. Back to your original question: is why did God do it after they crossed the Jordan instead of before the Jordan, where it had been safer? This is just an idea. Again, you can toss it out very, very easily. As easy as I say it. So when they crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, that is representative of the Lamb, right? That you would pick the Lamb on the 10th day. Messiah came into Jerusalem on the 10th day. And so the thought on there, again, this is my thought, is, and again, they hadn't been circumcised for some time, right, for 40 years. The reason that they came across, the lamb has to be unblemished. I don't know if God considers that a blemish or not, but that's just a thought of mine, because you can't take a goat that's been castrated, or a goat that's got, or a lamb that's got horn broken or anything else. They were perfectly intact when they went across on the 10th of the month, and so they were more of a unblemished lamb. That's my thought. I don't know your thoughts on it. Yes, sir.
Well, this is not to that.
Okay, change the subject already.
Well, no, it's sort of, but along that same line, I was going to say that when the Messiah appeared to Joshua, I wonder if that would have been about the same time that he was pronounced like the Son of God by the Roman soldier or Pilate, I can't remember who, prior to being crucified.
Found no.
That would have been on the 14th.
Yeah.
It could have been, right? Because it does talk about them doing Passover and being circumcised. So maybe, to Johnny's point, they were circumcised on the 14th day. Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to be first, and then the eternal. I don't know. That's it's a great finding no fault with him. Is that what you're getting at with Pilate?
Well, he made himself known as God to Joshua, to the people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, commander of the army. I thought you were talking about, and I may have missed it, on Pilate when he went in front of Pilate, and Pilate didn't find any fault in him.
Along that same line. But he also told the Roman soldiers he could command 70,000 or.
Oh yeah.
70
legions or 7 legions or something like that. Something to that effect. Well, very interesting. I don't know. It's a great thought.
Commander of the armies.
Yeah. She put it together for me. Thank you. He was still saying that he was the commander of the armies of God at that time. Very interesting. I like it. All right. Anybody else? Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Go ahead. I don't want to be too late because I got my queso going back there. Okay. You got anything else? Because I've gone a little bit long on this one. Apologize. And while you do that,
one thing we need to do, I mean, back then, the Jericho were in fear of God, and the people of Israel, I mean, they really didn't have much of a fear of God.
yeah, I mean, at this point, this is fresh. You just parted the river for you. You just did Passover. It's you've got God's fresh on your mind at this point, right? And so your faith is very strong.
Exactly.
To your point.
And to the point again, modern day, do the people here on earth nowadays, or people in the church, do we fear God?
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, because we've lost that a lot through the society.
Yes, and meaning that on going back to the circumcision, it's more not circumcision down there, more like circumcision of the heart.
Of the heart, like it talks about in the New Testament.
Replace your heart with Jesus' heart or Yahweh's heart.
Right.
So it's a matter of saying to be sanctified before God.
Right.
And back then, it's sanctified before you go into war with Jericho.
Okay. Yeah. I like it.
Okay.
All right. So we'll wrap it up right there. I'm running a little bit long. Again, I apologize. Again, I said these are very interesting chapters. And again, you don't have to agree with me. That's fine. We'll still be friends. But let me know, because if you disagree or whatever, then I'll probably learn something and follow what you're talking about. All right. But now Joshua 6. We're gonna the subtitle of mine says Jericho is destroyed. Y'all want to start and say verse 1? All right. Sounds good. It says Jericho was bolted and barred shut because the people were afraid of the Israelites. No one could enter or leave. Yahweh said to Joshua, I'm about to hand Jericho, its kings, and its warriors over to you. All the soldiers will march around the city once a day for 6 days. 7 priests will carry ram's horns ahead of the ark, but on the 7th day you must march around the city 7 times, while the priests blow their horns. When you hear a long blast on the horn, all the troops must shout very loudly. Excuse me. The wall around the city will collapse. Then the troops must charge straight ahead into the city. Verse 6. Joshua, son of Nun, summoned the priests. He said to them, pick up the ark of the promise and have 7 priests carry 7 ram's horns ahead of Yahweh's ark. He told the troops, march around the city. Let the armed men march ahead of Yahweh's ark. After Joshua had given orders to the troops, the 7 priests carrying the 7 ram's horns ahead of Yahweh marched off as they blew their horns. The ark of Yahweh's promise followed them. The armed men went ahead of the priests who blew the horns. The rear guard followed the ark, while the priests continued to blow their horns. Joshua ordered the troops, don't shout, make any noise, or let one word come out of your mouth until I tell you to shout. Then shout. So Yahweh's ark went around the city once. Then they went back to camp and stayed there for the night. Joshua got up early in the morning. The priests carried Yahweh's ark. The 7 priests carrying the 7 ram's horns were ahead of it. The priests blew their horns as they went. The armed men were ahead of them, and the rear guard followed Yahweh's ark, while the horns blew continually. They went around the city once on the 2nd day and returned to camp. They did this for 6 days. Verse 15. On the 7th day, they got up at dawn. They marched around the city 7 times, the same way they had done it before. This was the only day they marched around it 7 times. When they went around the 7th time, the priests blew their ram's horns. Joshua said to the troops, shout, because Yahweh has given you the city. The city has been claimed by the Eternal. Everything in it belongs to Yahweh. Only the prostitute Rahab and all who are in the house with her will live because she hid the messengers we sent. But stay away from what has been claimed by the Eternal for destruction, or you too will be destroyed by the Eternal. If you take anything that is claimed by the Eternal, you will bring destruction and disaster on the camp of Israel. All the silver and gold and everything made of bronze and iron are holy and belong to Yahweh. They must go into Yahweh's treasury. Verse 20, so the troops shouted very loudly. When they heard the blast of the ram's horn and the walls collapsed, the troops charged straight ahead and captured the city. They claimed everything in it for the Eternal. With their swords they killed men and women, young and old, as well as cattle, sheep, and donkeys. But Joshua said to the 2 spies, go to the prostitute's house, bring the woman out along with everything she has, as you swore you would do for her. The spies went and brought out Rahab, her father, mother, brothers, everything she had, and even all of her relatives. They gave them a place outside the camp of Israel. Then Israel burned the city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and everything made of bronze and iron into Yahweh's treasury. Joshua spared the prostitute Rahab, her family, her father's family, and everything she had. She still lives in Israel today because she hid the messengers Joshua had sent to look at Jericho. Verse 26. At that time, Joshua pronounced this curse. Yahweh will curse whomever comes to rebuild the city of Jericho. It will cost him his firstborn son to lay the foundation. It will cost him his youngest son to set up the city doors. So Yahweh was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. All right. What kind of comments, questions we got on this one? Lydia? You know I hold everybody else off.
Do you think they shouted something, or they just shout, ah, like, was there something they shouted, do you think, or just, ah, like a scream?
It's a great thought. And it doesn't say, so anything I say will probably be off. But it just says shout. Now, the word that's used here for shout is like a revelry kind of deal, almost like a horn. Matter of fact, I think it is the same word as shofar, right? That they were going to do for this yell. So I think it's more of like a proclamation. I don't know if they yelled Yahweh. I don't know if they yelled, "You're in trouble, suckers." I don't know, right? But they just made a loud, continuous sound while the horn was going, and God delivered another miracle, right?
War cry, as they're running in.
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of war cry, loud proclamation, and then when the walls came down, they went in and did what they were supposed to do. Now, one of the things here that talks about the warriors on there. This is not all 600,000 of the men. The word warriors here is the same word that we had a couple of chapters back, where we talked about Reuben and Gad and Manasseh's elite fighting force. So these 40,000 soldiers were from the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, and were their specialty bad guys, right? To say it nicely, that were leading and following the priests and the army. So still, 40,000 along with the priests carrying the ark, that would still be amazing, right? To see, because 40,000 soldiers lined up, walking around your city walls every day for 6 days, and then on the seventh day they get up early and walk around it 7 times before this destruction. I mean, that'd be very scary.
If they made just a complete circle, continuous, and followed the beginning, or
Oh, okay, I understand about, like, they start here and they go all the way around, and by the time they get there, it's all the way. I don't know. This is a good thought. I don't know how big the actual city of Jericho was, and I don't know if they're single file, if they were 20 across, or how they did it. But very interesting. Very interesting thought. What are the comments, questions you got?
give you the sound coming from all directions.
All directions, yeah.
Yeah.
The vibration too, you know. But if you think about it, and again, I don't know. This is just my thoughts, and so. But if you have 40,000 compact as possible marching, that might be a heavier, rumble on the walls going around. I don't know. Just a thought. Or to your point, however big the city was, if they had people lined up going all the way around, then you'd have a continuous vibration around the city on these walls. Yes, sir.
There you have the Jordan River, full of rocks and everything, so you kind of have to, you kind of think, there's rocks.
Yeah, and we've seen the Gilgad was in the Jericho Valley, right? But on the west side of Jericho is just mountains, right? And so to your point, rocky terrain on there. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's ridges on both sides of Jordan. So being that, you're on a solid foundation, and these Jericho, they built this, what do you call it, castle? Or,
like a fortress, basically. Because in that time frame, we even saw it in like the Middle Ages, right? You'd have this castle with the protection around it, and so the peasants didn't live there. But if they were ever attacked, then people would flee inside the castle as a refuge. And so same way with Jericho. I'm sure that there was people that lived all around Jericho, and they sounded the alarm, and everybody came running because it says it locked them in, and nobody could come or go on there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Being that these walls wasn't made out of stone maybe some more, but on this bronze period, they were made of mud, clay mud kind of
Okay.
thing. And it's just not one wall, but two wall that goes around it, pertaining to what Hebrews chapter 11, verse 30, they say walls, plural. So
Okay.
there's two
Or could
sides.
that be the four sides? They consider each side a wall. So then you have four walls
Well,
around.
I mean, it's make it harder for people to climb over the one wall, but then
Yeah.
trying to get up to that second
Yeah,
wall.
going back to the Middle Ages, you'd have a moat
Mhm.
around and then walls and then and more walls. And as if they could get past one, they'd still have a barrier on there.
Down off the first wall, I mean, they're shooting arrows or whatever, throwing rock down towards them, Hey, this is just a terrible situation.
Right.
But anyway, now I lost my train of thought here. But being that, okay, they, like Linda said, it's one complete circle around, and all the voices is going to be going towards the middle, meaning that, I mean, they're unloaded their whole lung and guts, to make this real loud sound.
You're talking about on the seventh day at the very end, because for the first 6 days they couldn't make a sound. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the 7th day, though. So that's pretty loud sound.
Yeah.
Also, in being a circle around like that, I mean, immersion can come to the city. They're kind of like, stay away kind of deal. Making. That's my thinking.
Okay.
They're staying away
Yeah.
from this location.
That's
So-
a good thought.
And also, I come to believe in what might have happened here was, okay, they're walking around Jericho's wall there, and the first day nothing happened. Second days, nothing happened. Third day, and then the people gradually start getting on top of this wall and say, what's going on out here? I mean, until gradually, pretty much all the cities on top of this wall, and then so then there that's a lot of weight on top of these walls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what you're having is when on that 7th day when they shouted, I mean they kind of spooked them. They shifted the material underneath them, jolted the walls, and they came tumbling down.
Yeah. No, that's a great thought on there. Go ahead. I'll let you finish real fast, but then I got a couple other people that are looking.
And then here in verse 20 say the troops charged straight ahead, not climbing. They struck. When the walls came down, they were right there. Eye to eye, pretty much.
Okay. No, it's a great thought on there, and I'm gonna cut it short. I got a couple other people that are raised in, but yeah, no, I think that's a great thought of how people got up there and the weight and everything else and the shifting. However, I don't want to lose track, and one of the things too is God is, if nothing else, He is a God of laws, physical laws, spiritual laws, everything. So something that He had set up here caused that to go down from the vibration to the something on there. It is a physical act, so but it was still a miracle to get it done because they had no planning. They were told to do this. They did it, and guess what? 7 days later, to your point, their enemy were eye to eye with them, and they could get rid of them. Go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
Well, there's three things toward this. The number one, the Babylon, the original Babylon with Nebuchadnezzar, those walls, that was a double wall, like Johnny was talking about. Just to give you an instance that they did that back
Right.
in those times. Another thing is that when it talks about the prophecy about the sun, if you build back on top of this,
Oh yes, yeah.
that the sun, there's
Your
actually-
oldest son will die when you do the foundation, and then your younger son will die when you do the doors, basically.
Well, yeah, and they actually found that there's a scripture, probably, I don't remember where it was. I didn't.
It's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. Anyway, but that actually happened, and it says so in one of the scriptures that one of the keys when they went to build on it, and the youngest son was put where the gate was.
Oh,
buried
wow.
with the gate. And that goes back to threshold covenant too, as far as that goes, because they violated that covenant.
Right.
But I'll have.
So
more.
then, with that thought, then I'll let you think about it. With that same thought, then probably the first son was in the walls foundation somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But archaeologists have gone over and they've dug where the ancient Jericho is, and they found the remains of the city walls and stuff. And they actually said that they showed that they fell inward and not outward.
Oh, very interesting. I didn't know that. The fell inward. But anyway, I don't know how, they didn't say how high the wall was or anything else. And so a lot of it is speculation. But, if you're 20, 30, 50 feet up and the wall falls down, as Ron was saying, inward from the studies, you've also, and Johnny said, hey, it basically flattened the wall. Then the rubble and everything else would just be like an earthquake, right? Or a rock slide or something that could just kill probably. They could probably kill most of the inhabitants of the city, and then these elite soldiers, warriors went in and cleaned up the rest on there. Let me get Loretta real fast. I'll be right back to you.
It shows here that when they went and they were digging up the city of Jericho, that they did find part of the wall, and it was 4.5 feet wide.
Okay, 4.5 feet wide.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
up to here on me. I mean,
Yeah.
if I was a lot flat, it'd up my neck. So that's
Definitely thick enough for people to walk on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a solid wall. So
Wow.
that's pretty heavy.
That's yeah. And then you're on to, if Johnny's theory is correct, they're all up on top of watching these crazy people walk around. Look at these people. They've been doing this for 6 days. What are they doing, right? And then today they just want to get really tired. So you get up on top and you get all these people, and the wall falls with all the weight and the rubble and everything else. So like I said, I think it could take out quite a bit of people. Go ahead, John.
The only one that didn't come down was where Rahab was.
Right, and Rahab was part of the city wall, right?
Yeah.
So if you had a double wall, it would have had to been at least separated out enough that you could have a house or a hotel basically in between on there, because she was part of that wall. So all the walls fell down except for Rahab's. And then, because my thought on it was, I was thinking that they fell outward, and then that would be very easy for Rahab and them to get out. But it does say that he sent the two messengers to go get them in there. Yeah. What other comments, questions, thoughts, ideas would everybody have? Go ahead, Johnny.
Also, another possibility could happen is, to where when it comes to the ground split for Korah and the followers and their families, and also their possession. I mean, that split found where all these families were at, and it fell down.
Yeah. I don't think it found it. I think it was told where to split.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Same thing here. If God done it this other way, split the ground and have it fall down flat.
Yeah.
To where the soldier going straight towards them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a possibility there too.
Absolutely. Anything's a possibility, because it doesn't get into the nitty gritty and telling us exactly all these ideas and thoughts that we have. So we're left with an assumption. And, the parts that aren't left for assumption are the laws. And he wants you to follow these laws particularly, right? And we're talking about Passover and the circumcision. I don't think they did Passover after the second year because they weren't circumcised. And that is part of the law in there, is they have to be circumcised to do the Passover.
That's what I kind of think on this scenario here is, these people were, these people climbed this top of their building. Their houses are flat, so they were on top. God mainly wanted for them to see, what they're going to be confronted with.
Yeah, no, and that's human nature to know. Okay, what's going on out there?
Parade or something.
I don't know if it would have been a parade. It would have been a very fun parade to watch. I'll tell you that. I do have a couple of notes here. I wanted to go through real quick. And so, did anybody notice how many times the number 7 or the word 7 was said? Right. I mean, it's throughout. 7 priests, the 7th day, 7 horns, 7 times. In case you're wondering, don't want to count it. I actually counted it for you. It's 13 times. That was the number of 13. What is there a significance on 13? Ron, do you know? I don't remember what that is. While he looks that up, just to kind of give a hierarchy here. So God gave the instructions to Joshua, which, we just got done with chapter 5, which at the very end of chapter 5, which talks about the commander of the armies of God. And then it talks about how God talked to Joshua. So I don't know if that was at the same time frame, right? I mean, it's very interesting on there. And I don't know, again, in chapter 5, it talks about Passover too. So Passover, actually the days of unleavened bread is 7 days. Did they do this every day during the days of unleavened bread? I don't know. That's a thought. And the only reason I say that is because it's so close together on there, and it says he wants you to do it for 7 days. So again, the first and seventh day of Passover are holy days. So then that would lead me to the question of, and had to be a Saturday in there, right? So he talks about don't work and everything else, but if God instructs you to do something, even go to war on the Sabbath, then that's the option that you do on there. Any other comments, questions? I don't want to keep talking. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think that there was a close for whoever builds the city of Jericho?
Why? For one, it says that the spoils were the Eternals, right? The God. So everything was for God. So then if somebody's coming back and trying to rebuild on this, then it's almost like a theft that they're trying to steal what God has claimed. It's almost, as we talked about with the commander of the army, hey, this is holy ground. So if God claims it, I would think that would almost be holy ground, even though they burned everything up. And that kind of gets into, I don't know if y'all remember the different offerings that we did, but there was an olah, which is a kind of a peace offering to God. You burned everything up. Nobody got anything out of that. It was just all burned up, which is kind of the same way here. Anything that was flammable was able to be burned up. Yes, sir.
The number 13 in the Bible means rebellion, sin, and lawlessness, but it can also mean that change.
Okay. I don't think it was the rebellion on there because they were doing what they were supposed to do, so maybe it has to do with the change. Excuse me. Any other comments? Yeah, because there's a big change here too, right? They're coming in and it's Johnny's earlier point, they are committed, right? They're doing what they're supposed to do until next chapter. In chapter 7, we find out that it slips really quick again. I talked to y'all about the 40,000 soldiers. These were the elite soldiers from Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh. Again, I don't know if y'all remember, it was like 2 weeks ago, I think, when I talked about verse 12. It says, and if I can find verse 12, Joshua got up early in the morning. Do y'all remember what I said that means? Any time in the Bible where you see somebody that gets up early in the morning, it's a zeal, a zest for God on there. So a couple of chapters ago, Joshua got up early in the morning, and it was showing his commitment, his zeal, his zest for God on there. So we see that Joshua gets up early in the morning in verse 12, but then we also see that the troops got up early in the morning, along with the priest, when they went around 7 times on there. So it says that they got up. So that just kind of shows the zeal and the zest, and again, to Johnny's point, how committed and single-minded they were on this operation here. And again, I can keep going, so interrupt me. Yes, sir.
God had to prepare them, okay, like, where we already read, they had to be circumcised, and to do the Passover, and then to next day go into war. God prepared His people, even if they don't know what to do.
Yeah, even if they don't know why they were preparing, they were getting prepared. Yeah.
Preparing them the right way, the righteous way.
And remember, right before we went into into Jordan, they had to make themselves holy. That was one of the parts. They made themselves holy. Then they went in, presented on the 10th day, did the Passover. And so, again, I don't know if they did this in days of unleavened bread, but it just kind of falls in line. Yes, sir.
Well, probably why they were feeling so energetic and filled with zest and joy, it was probably around 8 days after their circumcision. They were
that might have been it. Yeah, exactly. Woo-hoo! Finally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you know it's very traumatizing for an 8-day-old baby, but as for a 4-year-old man, it might be even more traumatizing to have that done. Let me see. We talked about everything being claimed by God, which is it's pretty cool. The word for that was, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's like it's written like harem. It's Herem, and it means banned from taking. So if you ever heard of these sheiks or whatever in their harem that were banned from taking, and so I thought that was pretty interesting. We talked about the Olah offering. Everything's burned up. Did anybody have any questions or thoughts on Yahweh's treasury? What was Yahweh's treasury? Because it said all the gold, silver, iron, and bronze went to God's treasury. Nobody? No? Just take a guess. Grab anybody. Exactly. Your tithes and everything would go to the priests, and that's their treasury. So the priests got all the gold and silver and iron and bronze from this, and then everything else, like I said, everything flesh, and even wood and everything was burned up on there in order to incinerate, because it was basically when it says that it belonged to Yahweh, it was the offering, that Olaf offering to God on there. And I'm going to keep going, and y'all just yell at me if y'all got a question. We talked about the wall coming down. They killed everyone. Animals too. You would think, I mean, everything, and that's why it goes back to that Olaf, because everything is burned up in the Olaf offering. And then that's it. That's all I got there. What comments, questions you got? Are you saying none, Lydia? No comments, no questions? Yeah, Ron's question. When are we going to eat? Pretty soon. Go ahead, Johnny, real quick.
Yeah, mainly here when it comes to Rahab, the person in authority is going to be Joshua. If it wasn't Joshua, and if it was somebody else, I mean, Rahab, would be put under. But about the law, and Joshua being the ruler, and pretty much saved Rahab and the father's family and everything they had, but it had to be under Joshua's rule to do that.
Well, it's interesting on that too. We didn't kind of touch on it, but great points on that. I'm not getting on that, but so Ron was talking about its representation of kind of coming out of the world. On there is, she came out and she was not allowed into the camp. She was put outside the camp. But then later on, I think it is in verse 25, it says, she lives in Israel today. Now, I don't know if that was referring to the camp. I assume it was just referring to the camp. So she was put outside the camp, which she probably had to go do the same kind of rituals and everything else to become holy, to be able to live inside the camp. And that's why they saved her, but put her outside. But then later on, we find out that she's living inside the camp, in my humble opinion on there. So she had to go through the same purification processes on there to become holy. Like any foreigner, exactly, on there. What's very interesting and what is very fair and everything else about God is it's the same law for everybody. And rich, poor, foreign, natural born, and whatever. It's exactly the same law for everybody on there. Talk about pure equality on there. Everybody was put through the same set of circumstances on there.
Even, like I say, even sinners, I mean, she was a sinner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as a person a sinner, you can come in.
You can come be outside, but you can work your way back in through following the process. Exactly.
Yeah.
Great comment. Thank y'all very much. Ron's already eaten all my queso, so we're gonna have to go so that I make sure that I get some. But if everybody would please, thank y'all very much for the Bible study again. Next week we'll do 7. Ron, are you gonna have a message? Okay, so just you only have to hear me one time next week, and then Ron will have a message. But if everybody would please turn to page number 95 and stand. We're going to sing, O Thou, the Shepherd of Israel art, after which we'll get Mr. Ron Harmon to come do our closing prayer. I forgot to tell everybody earlier, so last minute. Thanks, Johnny, for the last minute prayer. Page number 95. Charlie. Thank you. And now for our closing prayer today, Mr. Ron Harmon.
Our great, merciful, and heavenly Father, we come before you today to give you thanks. And thanks for this knowledge. Thanks for this gathering. Thank you for being present with us today, Father, and filling us with your Spirit and giving and making it possible for us to be part of your kingdom. We thank you, Father, for all the blessings that we have and have received and that you will hopefully give us throughout this next week. We thank you for the food we're about to eat. May it bless our bodies in the way that you see fit. Watch over us, guide us, and strengthen us as we go about our week. And we ask all these things in your Son's name. Let thy will be done.